Are Haggai Siegel, who's an expert on militant Islamism and Al-Qaeda, and Dr. James Boyce, who lectures on American politics at Richmond University. Welcome to you both. Siegel, I mean, President Obama chose his words pretty carefully. What was he claiming had been achieved after the 10 years of war?
Well, actually, remarkably little. And I think if you look at the words in his statement, it's quite incredible how little he was even claiming, even when making a statement that was read in the middle of the night in Afghanistan, because it was a prime time in the United States of America. In describing their efforts in the last 10 years, he said, we've been able to blunt the Taliban's momentum. Blunt, which kind of suggests that that's the statement you'd expect to hear 2 or 3 months afterwards, not 10 years along the line. And when describing their mission there, he said the US only has designs, does not have designs, beyond the end of Al-Qaeda's safe havens and respect for Afghan sovereignty. We're only here to stop Al-Qaeda doing what they will. We have nothing else. His main message was, that they're going to finish the job and that this is going to be done. But I think it's very clear that what now a US president and the US strategic establishment is defining as the job is only a tiny percentage of what that was been envisioned when this operation began, or even when these statements were being made 3 or 4 years ago. And I think he's basically accepted that there is no real capacity to defeat the Taliban. And in fact, in this statement said, we're going to actively support negotiating with them so that when we depart, there can be some kind of consensus between those we've been fighting with and those we've been fighting against.
Of course, Dr. Boyce, what he's really saying is, I didn't start this war, but I am going to get America out of it, as I promised I would when I ran for the presidency, basically in time for a second term.
Which is exactly what he did say, and as you rightly point out, this was a trip which was designed to coincide entirely with prime-time elections. Timing in politics, as you know, Adam, is everything. This was a trip designed to coincide with, he kicks off his campaign for re-election this weekend. After this weekend, it's very difficult for him to appear on military bases as Commander-in-Chief in a campaign mode. This is a perfect time for him to do so, to try and change the subject away from the advert that ran this weekend, which has caused him some problems back in the United States.
Well, this was an advert also related to his role as Commander-in-Chief.
It was directly. It was a 90-second commercial narrated by Bill Clinton, of all people, talking about Obama's successes as Commander-in-Chief, and it's drawn a lot of fire. I did a piece about it this morning on thecommentator.com, and it talks very much about the problem that Obama has focused entirely upon his own role, hasn't credited the Navy SEALs, for example, or the work by the CIA. And there's a lot of people on the right in America who are claiming that this is a victory lap, almost, that Obama is dancing in the end zone, effectively.
But, I mean, on that, Mr. Siegel, I mean, the right would claim that, wououldn't they? Because actually wiping out Osama bin Laden is one of the positives that he can put on his record.
Yes, of course, and it swings around the stereotypes of US politics and the way in which the Republicans wish to be perceived, though I think it would be disingenuous to suggest that it would happen any other way. I think anyone who has watched the brutality of American presidential elections knows that whoever had been in charge would quite rightly be using this. American presidents are commanders-in-chief, and they expect to be judged on those credentials. And when they have a success which had been totally eluding the previous administration of the opposite side, I think whoever's in charge was going to make the most of it, and the other side was going to take umbrage at them doing so. As
you say, Dr. Boyce, this was a moment when he could have raised it. It's also the anniversary. Do you expect going forward that Afghanistan and indeed the record in Iraq and the role of the President as Commander-in-Chief is going to play a particularly big part in this campaign?
I think it will play a role, because what it will allow Obama to do is to distinguish himself as Commander-in-Chief from the domestic focus of Mitt Romney's experience. So it elevates him in the office. The incumbency is a vital role in a presidential election, and this is just going to be another one of the tools that Barack Obama can use, I think, to wage against Romney in the fight going into November.
What about the message that the President is sending to the rest of the world, and particularly, I suppose, to Islamist groups, when he basically says, the game's over for Al-Qaeda? Is that one that's credible?
Well, I think there's a lot of satisfaction in the counter-terrorism community that in the last year or so there has been really some genuine successes, and it's not just the killing of bin Laden, it's actually the treasure trove of intel that they took there, which was resulted in basically a lot of al-Qaeda in effect going into hiding and really laying low in the fear that they know where they are. There's been some other major successes which have not been given as much public attention, but where the kind of middle management has been, some has been taken out. So there is satisfaction, but I don't think anybody is having any complacency that they're going to be gotten rid of. Not only that, if you see the justification the British government, the American government for the last few years have used for why troops remain in Afghanistan, in part it's been in the argument that most of the threats that emanate here in London, in the United States, come from command and control, which is implicitly linked with the groups operating across Pakistan and Afghanistan. And if we depart, they have the capacity to, again, reform, and that hits us back home. And so that question remains unresolved. If the operation has not been completed, and if those groups will no longer be surrounded by 90,000 US troops and tens of thousands of others, does the capacity of al-Qaeda to reorganise and reform and hit us over here return?
What about political opinion? I mean, is Islamic terrorism, al-Qaeda and its offshoots still seen as public enemy number one?
There's no doubt about it that what you're going to see, I think, going into the election is Barack Obama talking about his successes, trying to temper the threat from al-Qaeda, and rightly celebrating his defeat and murder of bin Laden.
It's interesting whether, if you like, emphasising it or putting it crudely, playing it up, benefits him or works against him?
Well, I think it does. I think there's no doubt about it. Because he can claim this victory, if bin Laden was still out there's no doubt that the Republicans will be using it to harangue him. And just as you rightly point out, they're not happy about the fact that he's able to celebrate this. Certainly they would be using it against him if they'd not found him. So it's something that he can use very much to his advantage going into the November election.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that. I think victims groups find this very difficult. They're asked, you found closure with the killing of bin Laden? They say that doesn't mean anything to us, but how it plays in the wider population, a sense that finally things are moving in the right direction, that, if there was people on the streets around Times Square when it happened as if, the New York Giants had won the Super Bowl or something, it had that kind of vibe. And there's no doubt at all it plays well. But as you say, he's gone in a bit of trouble from his own side because there's a feeling that it's been overplayed. And I think that will be the judgment, is how much this is seen as a good commander-in-chief or just someone who is trying to play political capital out of something that should be a lot more serious and a lot more nuanced.
Thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
That's great.